Roddy Piper knew that I was on the radar. WWE was watching me. So he's like, hey, Jared, come on back to my hotel room later. I want to give you some advice. I remember I got into the office, and he stands up and he gets right in my face. It's like he's going to beat me up in the room, and there's nobody around. And he goes, why are you a wrestler? Why do you think you deserve to be arrested? Like he's going to fight me in this hotel room. And I'm like, sir, I'm sorry. I don't know what I did to offend you. And he's looking around and he goes, are you nervous right now? I go, honestly, I am. And he goes, and there's nobody in the room. He goes, are you uncomfortable? I said, yes. He goes, so are these other 30,000 people watching us. And he pointed like there was a fake arena around us. And so what he was trying to show me was, if you can get lost in the moment and you can believe it's real and you can react as if it's really happening, the fans will feel the emotion.
Hello and welcome to the Ronny Leber Show, where every week we bring you fascinating guests with inspiring stories of success and overcoming obstacles from the world of sports, business and entertainment. To support this channel, please subscribe, turn on the notification bell and hit the like button so that we can deliver you the best content possible. Through watching wrestling on TV, he found his passion. After 8 years of doing it wrong, he finally figured out how to make it to the big leagues. He started out wrestling across northeast of the United States and later on wrestled for Impact Wrestling, the Ring of Honor, and also the most known of them all, the WWE. Under the alias Jaleel, he wrestled the likes of Booker T, Jerry the King Lawler, and Roddy Piper. And after his active wrestling career, he transitioned from the active in-ring performance to the backstage producing for weekly television and also for pay-per-view events, and even became the videographer for Hulk Hogan. Now he works as a peak performance coach for men, and get ready for some fascinating insights in the world of professional wrestling. Happy to have him on the show. Please welcome, here's Jaleel Ganem. Woo!
Hey, Ronnie, good to see you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Hey, Jared, great to have you here. And wow, when you listen to all your accolades, to your story, what comes to mind to you?
It's weird hearing that, because to me, I was just doing everything, day by day, and hearing it back, I'm like, I can't believe I did that. It's kind of like a dream come true in some ways, but it just seemed normal at the time, which is pretty cool. So thanks for saying it, man. It made me feel good.
You're welcome. Was it something that you imagined as a kid? Like, did you grow up and say, hey, I want to be a professional wrestler?
Yeah, you know what it was, Ronnie? So when I was a kid, my grandma, at her house, she only had a couple of different stations, so she didn't have cable, and it was the old rabbit ears. She had tin foil on the antennas, and she only had the Golden Girls. She had the news, and then there was wrestling on. So when I was like 5 or 6, I just chose wrestling, and I never looked back. That's all I focused on.
You didn't want to be a Golden Girl?
No, that wasn't for me. I don't know. Maybe Estelle. We'll see.
So what year was that? Like, when did you start wrestling, and who was big back then in the WWE? I guess it was WWE that you were following, or what was it at the time?
WWF. When I started watching it, it was the Ultimate Warrior. It was Hulk Hogan. It was Randy Macho Man Savage. It was Ric Flair. So I think around 91, 92.
Wow. So WrestleMania 7, WrestleMania 8, something like that. Who was
right around there?
Who was a favorite at the time?
Hogan was 100% my favorite.
Wow. Yeah. We're going to get to him a little bit later. So take us with you. Like, how old were you? Said we were 6, 7 years old at the time when you started out with watching wrestling. And I believe, and I started out around 93, actually, watching wrestling. And I was a big fan. And initially I had no idea that this was not real. So I thought, like, wow, there's really somebody here from the IRS and then Undertaker guy, like beating themselves up and so on. It was kind of fun to watch as a kid growing up. What was your first perception?
My first perception of it was, I remember my first perception was a commercial, because I'm flipping through the channels, and it was the Ultimate Warrior standing on top of a mountain going like this and snorting, and lightning was hitting behind him, and it looked like He-Man. It looked like a cartoon, so that's what got me hooked. And then I remember, I think it was Hulk Hogan versus the Undertaker, and the Undertaker pulled the cross off of his chest and threw it on the ground. Do you remember that? And I remember that was really a big moment. And Undertaker scared the crap out of me when I was a kid too. I didn't sleep with the lights off. I had to keep them on. It was pretty terrifying.
Because you thought the Undertaker is going to come to you at night.
I thought he was real. I thought he was a real guy.
Well, I mean, he is a real guy, and I saw an interview once that he actually really also walked around all in black and so on in public back then to really live his persona. But
Yes.
Okay, so take us with you. Basically, when did you actually start to wrestle actively? Because as a kid you were a fan, and you maybe made some moves probably with friends and so on. But when did this become a hobby, and did you wrestle in school, or how was that?
So I wrestled in high school. I think what happened was that when I was a kid, right after I started enjoying wrestling, I didn't realize that they had this, but my parents took me to a local show. It was down the road from me, maybe like 5-10 minutes, and it was at like a local police athletic league. And they had all these up and coming wrestlers. They had guys from TV wrestling locally, and it was like a little training ground. And it was locally in my area. So I started going to all of those shows every month. And when I got older, I never got into football. I never got into like pro sports to do them. I did them a little bit as a, as like a kid. But I remember I wrestled in high school, and then right after I was old enough, like 16, 17, I started going back to the local place that I watched as a kid, and they started to train me to be a wrestler. So I'd say I started right around 17 years old training.
Wow. So how does it work? I mean, obviously one of the parts is to really build up your body, because you really got to be physically strong, and also is the body thing, is it something that like you need a lot of strength, of course, but how does it work? Like, and how important is the body and the whole thing, and what else do you do in wrestling training?
Yeah, so I think the body is incredibly important. Number one, so wrestling, it's a sport because there's athletics, and it's also a cosmetic business because it's all about marketability. So if you notice, some of the biggest stars of all time, they're aesthetically pleasing. You have to have a certain type of look. It's not like MMA where the best fighter wins, because it's predetermined. So it's who's the most marketable, who has the best look, who can sell the most action figures. So cosmetically, it's super important. And even though it's predetermined, even though the moves are fake, you're getting the ring is made out of steel. It's made out of steel and plywood with a little gym mat on. So if you ever, did gymnastics in school, the blue mats that are there, it's like a blue mat with a plywood base and a steel frame. So you're getting slammed pretty hard. So you have to have your body built up. Yeah, yeah, with a little spring right in the middle.
Oh, so that it bounces back a little bit.
Yeah, it's like a shock absorber on a car.
Incredible. So when you're talking about this, like, because it's not always that just the most handsome guys are the biggest stars, because I wouldn't consider Hulk Hogan to be like the most handsome guy, or even Yokozuna or the Undertaker, or I mean, the Ultimate Warrior, he was built differently at the time in a way, but still there were. So how does it work? What makes somebody marketable?
There's a couple of different factors. So it's their look primarily. It's their height. WWE loves people that are 6'4", 6'5", 6'7". The Undertaker was almost 7 feet tall, like maybe not quite, closer to 6'7", 6'8", but they love height. It's the look. It's one agent told me, do they look like they've been in a fight before? So guys like Yokozuna, guys like the Undertaker, they have that certain look to them. And a lot of it comes down to charisma. It comes down to presence. It comes down to the way that you carry yourself. What a lot of wrestlers, when they break in, they mistakenly believe it's all about the wrestling moves. So it's lock up, take a headlock, take an armbar. But if you think about it, people rarely remember the moves that you do. They remember the characters and the stories behind it. So coming up with a character, like a color scheme, a look, some type of something marketable about you need a hook in order to get the attention. That's what they really look for.
Wow, it's fascinating. Also, when you say that people don't remember the moves that you do, but they remember the storylines, it's the same thing applies to public speaking. Like, people will not remember the exact words that you use, but they will always remember how you made them feel.
It's the emotion, yes.
Yeah. So wow, it's also the emotion that you can create in somebody, and of course, so for anybody that has never in their life watched wrestling, or professional wrestling, because it's not Olympic wrestling. It's not like being on a mat and so on. Like, I mean, maybe some of it, but basically it's different. So explain to us, what is wrestling?
In what way? If you can
Well,
clarify that, because that could go a
somebody
couple
who has
different ways.
never to somebody who has never heard of wrestling or never seen it, how would you describe it to them?
Wrestling, when I watched it, was a live action cartoon. Wrestling now, it's a simulated competition. It's a simulated combat. So the way it's supposed to work is it's a simulated fight. There's a good guy versus a bad guy, and they're trying to win a match. If you win the match, you get more money. The winner gets more money, gets more championship opportunities, things like that. And it's predetermined. And it's predetermined in order to get the fans invested into it, in order to get rematches, in order to sell merchandise and pay-per-views. It's like a live action drama or a live action movie, but they're doing it live. There's no takes, and they're doing it in the ring.
So yeah, and it does hurt, I guess.
Oh yeah, I haven't been seriously injured, but you get banged up. People do get seriously hurt. Yeah, it's no joke.
Wow. So and also, as you said, there's a good guy and a bad guy. Like the good guy is called the baby face or the face, basically.
The good guy's the baby face, the bad guy's the heel. Yep.
Exactly. And I mean, usually it's the baby face against the heel. I would say like in 70% of the times the baby face wins. And sometimes it's gonna be face against face, like if it's a very big thing. For example, like WrestleMania 6, Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior. But also but they never actually have heel against heel. It doesn't really happen because it's
Very
not
rarely.
Yeah, very rarely. But the point is also, and then sometimes they turn it's really kind of like a movie, isn't it? Or like a telenovela, like a soap opera.
Yeah, you know what? One thing that blew my mind is so there's a difference between the local wrestling I told you where I started, and then when you get to a WWE or televised level. At the local level, when you break in, you think it's all about moves, and you think it's all about the holds and the technical aspect of it, and then you get to WWE for a tryout, and you realize like they're setting up all of the camera angles. So what you might not realize is every time somebody gets put into a headlock, they're finding a camera to show their face to the camera. Every time they fall down, they're finding a way to get up and turn to face the camera again. There's like very specific places you position yourself in the ring. And I remember they would do walkthroughs over and over and over again to make sure that certain things happened in a certain corner of the ring so the camera could get a close up. It's just as much about facial expressions, emotion, micro body movements, taking your time for the replay. It's a live television production. It's insane.
When you say taking your time for the replay, like does the guy in the ring know now is a replay, or did
Yeah,
they?
yeah. So you wouldn't even think about this. I found this fascinating. And when I became a producer later, I learned so much producing it because I became the guy behind the camera. I became the guy that was looking at all the different monitors in the backstage, saying choose camera 1, choose camera 2, choose camera 5, and I would do the walkthroughs in the morning. But the interesting thing is, so the referee has an earpiece, and the referee's telling the wrestlers their time cue and telling them how much long they have, and he's relaying messages from the backstage and from the production truck. So say, for example, me and Ronny, we're wrestling and you knock me down and you pin me 1, 2, and then I kick out. You're going to sit up. You're going to put your hands on your head like this. The camera's going to zoom in on your face and the referee's going to tell you you're at replay. And we're not going to move until the replay gets off the air.
Wow, that's awesome. I learned something. That's
Yeah.
That's really I never knew that actually the referee has an earpiece.
Yep, it's all production. It's amazing.
So you do the walkthrough, of course, before that, and then but how about, like, for example, there are also different matches like ladder matches or a cage match, and there are some crazy stunts, like when they're jumping from, I don't know, like 10 feet, 15 feet or whatever, like 3 meters, 5 meters or whatever. They're jumping down and then landing on a chair, on the table and so on. How is that?
You know what they do? Sometimes during the afternoon, they'll have another wrestler try it and be like, hey, how was that? Did that hurt? Was that okay? And they'll do it on a crash pad before the main star does it. So they do that sometimes. They'll rehearse it with like a stunt double in the afternoon just to see on a big giant crash pad. But there's no way to fake it, man. Like when Mick Foley fell off the Hell in a Cell, he hurt himself. There's no way to fake a fall off a 20-foot ladder. you know?
Well, yeah, duh.
Yeah.
That's really. I mean, seriously. Sometimes I'm really thinking like, oh my god, like how do they do this? And also, or what about the thing with the chair on the head?
Oh, so they hit you with the flat part of the chair on the flat part of your back.
Oh, and that's what makes a noise.
Yeah, they try to hit you with the most surface area because it's like if you did martial arts, they tell you to fall with your back out, with your arms up. It's like a break fall. So if you can hit the chair across the back, it goes across a wider area, it doesn't hurt as much.
Oh, okay, okay, very interesting. I the thing about what you told me that you thought it was all about the moves and so on. Some years ago, I read the biography of Hulk Hogan. I found it very fascinating. Yeah, to really to listen or to read all that. And what he said back then was that he actually he also thought like everything is real and so on when he started out. And then he came to the pro career, and in his first match, they beat the shit out of him. Like they really basically totally took him down because he thought it's real, and then they they just
Yeah.
is this like as a rookie that you need to earn your you earn your way in?
Luckily, I started at a different stage, so I still had to earn my way in, but it was a little bit different. In Hulk Hogan's days, nobody knew that wrestling was fake. Like it wasn't something that they advertised. And as a matter of fact, they called it something called kayfabe, and it's just a fancy word that meant you protect wrestling and make everybody believe it's real at all costs. So, like what you said before, the Undertaker would walk around in all black all the time because he wanted to make everybody believe that he really was the Undertaker. Make sense? So
Yeah.
in Hulk Hogan's days, they wouldn't even tell the new wrestlers that it was fake. So a new wrestler would join up to their first day in wrestling school thinking it was going to be a performance. They'd break your leg on purpose just to prove to you it was real. And if you came back, then they'd be like, oh, hey, by the way, the whole thing is fake. We broke your leg as a test. So luckily, I didn't have to go through any of that, but that was very real back in Hogan's day.
Damn. To break the leg as a test. So you said
Yeah.
you wrestled the first 8 years being trained the wrong way, meaning really being focused on wrestling moves. And but like, what kind of
Yep.
wrestler were? I think you were very technical, if I researched correctly.
Yeah. So the first 8 years, when you break in locally, it makes sense too. You follow the advice that makes the most logical sense. It's wrestling, so you need to be a good wrestler, and everybody's teaching you how to be a good wrestler. So moves, lock up, have a good match. And I remember we're about 8 years in, and they finally had the head of WWE talent development come to watch us at a wrestling school, and everybody thought like, oh, he's going to hire everybody because we've been doing this for 8 years. We're really good wrestlers. And we thought this was everybody's shot to get hired. And so the talent scout came in and he watched everybody. And he goes, I appreciate what you did. Everything that you guys did here is technically good professional wrestling, but I can't hire any single one of you because none of you knows how to act like a superstar. So let me know when you figure that out. I'll see you later. And he walked out. And everybody in the school freaked out because we had all been training for 8, 9 years, some of us. And we had to realize like everything we learned that got us here was not going to get us there. And it was a really tough situation because it's like, do we realize that everything we knew was wrong? Do we listen to the guy that hires people for WWE, or do we make him wrong out of our own ego? A lot of people had to check their perceptions and dig down deep to keep going.
And just as a side note here, for everybody who is watching or listening, this is so true, not just for professional wrestling. This applies to many different areas. Like if you have your business and you do what everybody else is doing, and you might be doing your craft good, you might be okay in a local level, but if you want to make it big or if you want to expand, you need to find something that makes you the superstar, so to say, or you need to find your specific thing that differentiates you and makes you different. So you said before, you need to act like a superstar. How do you act like a superstar?
So here's the funny thing. It's all, and this will apply to business, will apply to life, this will apply to anything. When the wrestlers first break in, they're very, very humble. They're very happy to be there. They're almost nervous. It's almost like a guy that's afraid to ask the girl to the prom. You know what I mean? So they'll go to the WWE talent scouts, nice to meet you, and they'll bow and they'll be very respectful. and they won't ask for what they want. They're almost timid because they're hoping that they get hired. They're hoping they get chosen. And the guys that always stand out, the guys that always make it, are the talent that realizes that they're good. It's not that they have an ego, but they know that they have something special, and they carry themselves with that aura, with that confidence. They have something to offer. They have a character. It's all about a presence and carrying yourself strong and walking in like you deserve to be there. That's a big shift that guys have to make.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I got that. And so basically also that applies to any level, right? Or to any profession in a way.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, you got to act like you own it.
that's a great part. Like to act like you own it, because very, very often it doesn't matter where in what area, you really act like you own it until you own it. Like you need to, the first person that you need to convince that you own yourself, that you own yourself, is yourself.
100%.
Because if you don't believe it, who's going to believe you?
100%. Those are the guys that make it. So the guys that you see on TV, they're the ones that they really believe that they deserve to be there. And a lot of the local guys are like, well, why did they make it and I didn't? Because these local guys are still like, oh, hey, I hope I make it someday. I hope they think I'm good enough. But it's that perception's reality. If you want them to think you're a star, you have to believe you're a star first, and then it translates.
Yeah, or like, hey, why are they making it? My moves are so much better. But as you
It
said,
doesn't
it's
matter.
not so much about the moves.
Doesn't matter.
Like if you want to be a great public speaker, it's not about how fast you can say the alphabet.
That's a great point.
Yeah, it's really about like being distinguishable, being somebody
Yes.
with a great story, being somebody that is able to move the audience. The same,
Yeah, Ronny, you just nailed it. That's it.
yeah, the same applies to a wrestler. So okay, so let's say, all right, so what happened after your realization? You realized I did it wrong. What now?
So I got depressed for like a day. I remember after that seminar, I went home. I like pulled the covers over my head. I'm like, man, what do I do? Everything I learned was wrong. But here was the cool thing. So we had about like 20 guys in the wrestling school. I remember a good 15 of them were like, forget that guy. He doesn't know good wrestling. We're going to do it our way. We've been doing it for 8 years. Like they're telling the WWE guy doesn't know what he's talking about, right? It's crazy. But luckily, me and about 5 of my friends were like, we think we should listen to him. So he gave us his business card, and we had the nerve to call him and say, hey, what are we missing? He goes, I respect that you guys actually called to ask. He goes, here's what you got to do. He's like, you have to have a character. You have to develop an it factor. You have to have charisma. It's confidence. And so he started shadowing us and going to a couple of different events that we would do. And we'd keep going to his different seminars. And he really smartened us up. So I created a character after that because I realized it wasn't about wrestling. I created a character where instead of being a good wrestler, I was a Bollywood action hero, where I was saving women from burning buildings. I was like the Arnold Schwarzenegger, but of Bollywood. And I'd save girls from burning buildings. I would dance. I would do very little wrestling, and I put it on a demo reel. And I just started getting tryout after tryout after tryout. Like overnight, like where did this guy come from? And I'm getting a tryout with every major national company because I took all the wrestling out and I just put this stupid character on video.
Okay, so 2 things popped up in my mind right now. So you said going to seminars. Like, are there specific wrestling seminars, or what kind of seminars are you talking about?
Yeah, so there's specific wrestling seminars, and some of them are terrible, and some of them are really, really good. So some people are like local wrestlers that have been a local wrestler for 20 years and they've never done anything, and they're like, "Let me show you how to do it," and they give you really bad advice. So you have to be careful. But then there's seminars where there's people that have been to WWE. There are people that are talent agents, and they'll make the rounds and go to local schools and give advice, give seminars, and you can pay to be there. And if you listen to the right people, they're usually giving you some good advice. So, for example, the WWE guy was very, very helpful. There were a few others that we went to who have been there before and have trained people that have trained like Kurt Angle, people that have trained The Rock. They do seminars. So there's some really good ones out there.
Wow. When you talk about trained, like how does training to become a WWE superstar, how does it look like?
The way that WWE has it set up, and it's changed over the years. Now it's gotten much more sophisticated. The way it would work, it would be you'd be a local wrestler wrestling in front of maybe 50 people. And then eventually you'd make it a little bit more like a band performing gigs. So you get to about 100 people stadiums. Then you're 1,000 people. Then you start wrestling bigger and bigger arenas. And they're usually for independent outfits. They're not like officially sponsored by WWE or anything like that, but they're bigger events. And then somebody will find you and they'll start giving you some tryouts. So before like a WWE event will happen, they'll send out a couple of people nobody's ever heard about before, and they'll just try them out, see how the fans respond, see how they look on camera, try a couple of different things out, and they'll keep inviting you back a couple times. If they like you, they'll offer you a contract and they'll send you to a farm system. So for example, in baseball, the Boston Red Sox have a farm system, the Pawtucket Red Sox, and they call you up. So WWE has, now they have NXT. It used to be Florida Championship Wrestling. It used to be Ohio Valley Wrestling. They send you to their own feeder system and they train you for a while until you get called up to main TV.
Wow. Okay. So it's like the minor leagues, and then basically WWE is the major league.
Yes. Yep. And WWE has their own minor league system. One of them, it's called NXT now. And they'll put you, they have their own little TV show, and it's getting people ready to go to the main company.
And there's also a performance center in Orlando, right? Like, what happens there, and how does that work?
That was after my time, but so they have 3 rings in there. They have multiple trainers. They have interview class where they teach you how to do interviews and social media and how to do the wrestling promos. They have like a character class. They practice their bumps. They practice their moves. They practice their matches. It's in Orlando.
Do they really need to do their own social media, or do they have people doing that?
It's like social media training, like best practices on how to like stay out of trouble.
Ah, okay, got it.
Yeah.
And now coming to the actual training part, like how much training is involved, and what do you actually train? In, like, let's say in a week, like let's say the normal training rituals for a week, like you as a wrestler.
Yeah. So what I did, I would, because I wasn't in WWE's system that they have now. I was in a different one. But locally, I would be training at a local gym with a wrestling ring Monday through Friday, at least 3 times a week, if not 4, depending on my work schedule. I was training with weights separately every day, getting myself in the best shape possible. WWE, they're every single day, it's a full-time job for them. If they're on the road, they're training before the shows start. They're in the ring, they're practicing. If they're in NXT, every single day they're in the facility in Orlando. They're doing drills. They're running the ropes. They're doing calisthenics. They're practicing falling as much as possible. And they're really getting it in their body.
So when I'm listening to you also with all of that, by the way, so you said physical training. Is there also something besides physical training that is involved? You said interview training is part of that.
They do interview training. They do character development training.
Do you have somebody to work with you one-on-one, like to develop your character, or like an acting school, or how is that?
I'm not really sure. I think they just develop it over time. I think they give ideas. I think they have like sessions where they brainstorm some different things.
Mm-hmm. And okay, let's put it this way. Who is in your mind, because I'm just thinking about that, because of course every wrestler has different talents, and basically there are, so one of the things that you need to bring, of course, is the in-ring ability. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the other thing that you need to bring is the character in a way, and also of course you need to be like the promo ability, like what you can do on the mic, because that's really important in order to be a superstar. Mm-hmm. In your mind, who would be like, or who are the greatest wrestlers of all time in your mind?
It depends on what you would classify as the greatest wrestler. So in terms of like the biggest box office stars, I would say Hulk Hogan, The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, John Cena. They're mainstream. Everybody loves them. They sell a lot of merchandise. You put them on any show, a lot of people will come to watch them. And they're very good at what they do. In terms of like wrestling ability, and so like I think some of the best wrestlers in the world are wrestling ability and charisma combined. So that would be like Shawn Michaels, right? That would be like Eddie Guerrero. That would be like Kurt Angle, those types of guys. They have the whole package. Bret Hart, yeah, they have the whole package.
Yeah, they were and on the mic.
Uh, Ric Flair, Macho Man Randy Savage, The Rock, obviously, Hulk Hogan for his day. He's cheesy now, but back in his day, Hulk Hogan was pretty good. Yeah,
I love that. Did you ever also when you trained, did you ever try to impersonate them?
yeah. So I used to do a Ric Flair impression. I can't do it anymore, but I used to go nuts doing a Ric Flair impression quite a bit back in the day. That was fun.
Really?
Yeah.
Any off the cuff right now?
I can't do it off the cuff, right? It's been a long time. I forgot all the words to it, but I remember it's like 10 years ago. I would do it every time. They'd have me do it in the parking lot of restaurants and stuff. Yeah.
I just know that at the end there's a woo.
There's always the woo at the end.
or Macho Man, I think that's quite an easy one, isn't it?
They had one wrestler. I don't know if you ever heard of Jay Lethal became Macho Man and became Ric Flair in Impact Wrestling. I don't know if you saw that.
No,
Yeah, there was a wrestler and they just made him the Macho Man, and the Macho Man loved it. The Macho Man sent him his old outfits and everything.
Really?
Yeah.
Ah, that's
Yeah,
funny.
his brother was his manager. It was great, and then he became Ric Flair and wrestled Ric Flair against himself. So that was pretty funny too. Yeah.
I always loved when the Macho Man did promos with his "ooh yeah."
Yep.
His specific way of talking.
He always do that too, like with his hands, and he'd spin around. Yeah.
But he was very natural in that, and I think that's the point, that you need to become the character. You need to own it.
You know, so Roddy Piper one time, I'll never forget this lesson. I was doing local events, and Roddy Piper knew that I was on the radar. WWE was watching me, so he's like, "Hey, Jared, come on back to my hotel room later. I want to give you some advice." So it was really cool because it wasn't like he wasn't talking to hundreds of wrestlers. He wasn't just giving blanket advice. He wanted to have me privately in the room to give me some words of wisdom. I remember I got into the office, into his bedroom, really, in the hotel, and he stands up and he gets right in my face. It's like he's gonna beat me up in the room, and there's nobody around. And he goes, "Why are you a wrestler? Why do you think you deserve to be a wrestler?" Like he's gonna fight me in this hotel room. And I'm like, "Sir, I'm sorry. I don't know what I did to offend you." And he's looking around and he goes, "Are you nervous right now?" I go, "Honestly, I am." And he goes, and there's nobody in the room. He goes, "Are you uncomfortable?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "So are these other 30,000 people watching us." And he pointed like there was a fake arena around us. And so what he was trying to show me was, if you can get lost in the moment and you can believe it's real, and you can react as if it's really happening, the fans will feel the emotion. So he was trying to show me was, if he can get me uncomfortable, the fans feel that way. So it was a lesson. It was kind of interesting.
Wow, that's really awesome. And I mean, Roddy Piper, one of the greats, all-time greats actually. He was a main eventer of WrestleMania 1.
WrestleMania 1, yeah. It was great too because we had developed a friendship after that. Like we weren't like best friends, but we knew each other at the shows. And after that, he gave me some really good advice in the room. He's like, "Don't have any fear. Don't take no for an answer. Don't let them mess with you." He gave me some really practical advice. He just like downloaded into me. And then we were supposed to do an interview segment on one of the shows. And he's like, "No, I want to wrestle him." So it was cool. I got to have a full bell-to-bell match with Roddy Piper. He had his full gear on and everything. And I think it was one of his last official matches too. So that was an honor to be able to do that with him.
Wow, how is that? Like, take us with you. How does it work in the ring? Because you already mentioned before that actually that the referee has an earpiece, but at the same time, like, how is that for you? Because I know that, or what I've heard, for example, Bret Hart. Bret Hart was amazing in the ring, also in terms of making his opponent look good. Because it's not just about you, because it's always a team effort, right? That the audience gets a great fight.
Yeah. Yeah. So my mindset, because I was a bad guy for most of my career, my whole thing was, I could make myself look good by looking bad, or I could make myself look really good by losing. Right? It wasn't always about me winning or looking cool. So it's very collaborative. What they'll do is they'll say, "Hey, it's you versus Ronny, and you guys have 20 minutes. Ronnie's gonna win by doing this move." And so now it's up to me and you to fill in the blanks on how we get to the end.
So that's the
Within
whole
20.
briefing. That's the whole briefing that you got. It's just like, who's going to win? That's going to be the finishing move. And you got this time. That's it?
In a lot of cases, yes. In other
And how
cases,
do you know the time in the ring? Like, how do you know the time?
the referee's letting you know. He's like, you got 10 minutes left. You got 5 minutes left. He's counting you. He's counting you down from the get-go. Yeah. But yeah, so in some cases, they just tell you you got the ending, you have 20 minutes, figure it out. And then they have producers. So they'll assign a producer to your match and you run your ideas by him. And he'll be like, I think that's good. I think this needs a little bit of work. What if he did this instead? And you start to piece it together like a movie, or you start to piece it together like a sequence. And what you'll do is you let them know, hey, we're going to do this around this time. So then the production truck knows to look for a replay. Sometimes they'll tell you, they'll be like, hey, we need these 5 special things happening at this time. So you'll do that. It all becomes pretty choreographed after a while. Some of the best of all time would just get in the ring and do it without talking. They wouldn't have any plan.
Who would be that, for example?
That would be guys like Bret Hart. They just go in there without a plan and figure it out as they went. That would be more of the old school guys.
Although Bret Hart, you got to say, I mean, he was one of the best to ever do it in terms of technical ability, and he was just great in terms of really also guiding his opponent through. I heard one story of the SummerSlam '92 in Wembley, where he was actually wrestling against a British Bulldog, and who was from the UK, and or at least his character. And so basically, so what they did was that British Bulldog was going to win the Intercontinental Champion title from Bret Hart, and that actually Bret Hart was basically the British Bulldog. I think he was he was on drugs or something like that. Like he was totally or he was hungover from the night before, or whatever it was. So he was not really clear on his senses. And so basically Bret Hart had to, the whole match, he had to tell him every move, what the other guy had to do.
That's exactly what happens. Yeah, I don't know what happened with the British Bulldog that day. I know his head wasn't in the match, and Bret had to supposedly do the whole match by himself, tell him what to do. But so if me and you were in the ring, I'd grab you, I'd be like, okay, Ronny, put me in a headlock. I'm gonna throw you to the ropes. Like we talk the whole time as we're doing it.
How do you do that without the audience really noticing it? Like,
you usually do it with your teeth gritted, or your arm would be like this and you wouldn't really be able to see it, things like that. You try to avoid the camera. Sometimes there's no avoiding it, but at this point, I don't think anybody really cares.
Yeah, nowadays, because nowadays it's also World Wrestling Entertainment and not anymore World Wrestling Federation. But nowadays everybody knows. Also, okay, so that's the in-ring performance, so to say. How about the what about the locker room? Because people always or oftentimes talk about the locker room, like how is it backstage, basically? Like, and are there some specific leaders, and how does it work back there? Is there like a hierarchy between the people, or is it more like friends hanging out?
It's very weird. It's a very weird environment. I'm just speaking from my own personal experience. It's hard to have too many friends because you have a couple of them, and they're the ones you can trust, and then everybody else is kind of looking out for themselves. So people don't want you to be successful, because if you're successful, that means you're going to take their spot. So they're always looking for ways to outmaneuver you, kind of give you the wrong advice, kind of stab you in the back a little bit. It can be shark infested water sometimes. So it was difficult for a long period of time. But there's always a few people you can count on, and they're like your crew that you hang out with the most.
Okay, great. How did your career end at the end?
My career ended where I did that character I told you about, Jaleel, and it was going really well. And then I remember
Jaleel, because you also said that or you also told me that basically in Orlando everybody believed that he was real somewhere. Like also maybe tell this story as well.
Yeah, so I went backstage to one of the WWE producers, and I'm like, I have this idea. I want to be a Bollywood action hero. And he goes, well, are you really a Bollywood actor? And I go, I told him, it's still funny to me that I said this to him. I had the guts. I'm like, is the Undertaker really dead? And he's like, well, I guess you're right. Okay. So my job was to prove to him that people would believe this thing was real. So Jaleel, in case you don't know, he was a Bollywood action hero. And the whole character was, I thought the best bad guy wrestler would be a wrestler that didn't want to be a wrestler. He'd be a guy who's only using wrestling for his own personal gain, and he was going to be an actor trying to get famous in America. So the whole gimmick was this guy didn't want to be a wrestler; he's just in it for the fame. So what I did is I wore an all-white suit, just an all-white suit, and I had 5 of my friends dress up in like black Secret Service outfits. And I created a Wikipedia profile of Jaleel, of the movies that he was in, of any scandals on TMZ that he might have been involved in, the famous actresses he dated, all these different, and it looked real. And then I made, because my friends were in film and TV production, we made a couple of fake movie trailers of me, saving women from burning buildings, me, doing all these different action hero things, me dancing, me on radio interviews, and I put it together as a highlight reel of this guy's movies. And so we walked around downtown Orlando, and people are like, "Who's that guy?" Because I got all these agents around me. That's Jaleel. That's Jaleel. Like, no way. They go, Google him. So they would Google me, and my Wikipedia would show up, and my movie trailers would show up, and then everybody started celebrating like a celebrity was in the restaurant with them, and it became absolute pandemonium. There's like pictures of me like taking pictures with like random strangers and stuff. It was nuts. We're like the whole crowd's dancing. So it was like proof of concept that it would work.
That's incredible.
It was fun.
It's not so much what you do. It's also all about the frame, how you frame it.
It was the frame. It was 100% the frame.
So when you're talking about the persona or the personality that you came up with, or like the character, is it something usually that you do by yourself, or is it something that basically that the promotion tells you? Because I mean, there are quite some stories that Vince McMahon has been very creative. The Vince McMahon, the head of the WWE for decades, and that he has been very creative in terms of creating some personas or personality.
It's yes, and it's a collaboration. So sometimes they get it right. So Undertaker, Vince McMahon came up with that. $1 Million Man, Vince McMahon came up with that. If they don't have anything for you, you're on your own. So it's like it's like sink or swim. So you have to find something for yourself to get yourself noticed, to get to the next level. I think John Cena, maybe you heard of this, they were ready to fire him. And then he just started rapping on one of the tour buses. And they go, "Hey, John, do you want to rap on TV?" And then he became famous because he was about to get fired. He just started doing something. So sometimes you can come up with your own thing.
Wow, that's I mean, of course, it's very cool. Also, after you were done with your active career, you transitioned to backstage, or to basically to producing. How did that come, and what did you learn by that?
That was my favorite time in my career, because all of the agents, all of the producers, all of the people that were training me would give me this advice, and I'd be like, "Yeah, that makes sense. I understand that." But it wasn't until I was behind the camera that it all made sense. I realized it was Hollywood. I realized it was a television production, and I just learned so much. So it was my favorite time, because I would get to work directly with talent. I would be able to share with them, because I focused on wrestling for the first 8 years of my career. Then I found out the right way to do it. I was able to tell these younger guys right away the right way to get seen, the right way to produce themselves. I helped them to learn what it was like to be on television, because it's very different than wrestling locally. And a lot of them went on to go to WWE or Major League Wrestling or Impact Wrestling or like different things like that. But it was so fun to mentor the talent and help them out. That was my most fun time.
And also, you worked with Hulk Hogan, right? How was that? And how was he?
He was awesome. So I was wrestling. I was in Florida, and I had a friend of a friend that I was working with, and they found out like Hulk Hogan needed a videographer for his website. And I was doing local wrestling. I knew Mouth of the South Jimmy Hart, the manager, and he's like best friends with Hogan. So I had the connection, and I got to be his videographer. So I would go over to his house. I would film. We would do like interviews for his website, where he's talking about like his glory days and wrestling the Undertaker and winning the championship. And we put them as like mini shorts, and we'd put them up on YouTube. We'd put them up on the website. I remember we would be in Walgreens and stuff, and what would happen would be a fan would walk up to him, "Are you Hulk Hogan? Oh my God!" And she's on the phone with her mother. And "My mom's not going to believe that you're here." He's like, "Put your mother on the phone." So he'd be talking to people's mothers on the phone on Walgreens. It's Hulk Hogan, brother. And he was like a really cool guy.
Very awesome. Very cool. And if you would give advice to somebody who would like to start out to become a professional wrestler themselves, what would it be?
I would say get the fundamentals down first of all, and then after the fundamentals are down, the most important thing is marketability, your character, your it factor, your presence. That's the stuff that's really going to make the difference, and not being afraid to market yourself, because a lot of the guys are waiting to be discovered, and they're like, hey, if I stay local, if I just work really hard, if I try really hard, someone will eventually discover me, and it's not going to happen. You have to put yourself in the right position to get noticed, and you have to be willing to market yourself.
Awesome. What do you do now, Jared? Because you basically went out of wrestling, right? And now you're actually you went into peak performance coaching.
Yeah. So what happened is after wrestling, I was trying to figure out what was next, because what I had a match at Impact Wrestling, and nothing bad happened. I didn't get injured, but I remember I was on my back. The match got over, and my adrenaline just dumped in the ring, and I'm like, you know what? I just had a moment where I just knew I was done. I don't know if that makes sense, but like out of nowhere, I'm like, I know I'm done. So I just left. I never wrestled again. I never officially retired. I was just done. And I'm like, well, what do I do next? And so I'm trying to figure it out. I got into production, and I was trying to figure out, like, well, what do I really enjoyed coaching the wrestlers. So that morphed into coaching athletes. And then I realized, like, helping a man come up with a wrestling character, it's just a guy trying to put himself out there, discover his it factor, become the best version of himself. So I'm like, it's not just for wrestling. Like, I can help men discover how to be the best versions of themselves. So it's kind of morphed from wrestling to working with wrestlers, to working with athletes, now to just working with men to help them live their best lives and be their best self.
Wow, that's very awesome. If somebody's interested in general to catch up with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can just go to jaredganem.com. It's JAREDGAN as in Nancy, EM as in Mary.com. That's my website. You can go to my Facebook group too, where I'm working with men directly. It's facebook.com/groups/self-mastery for men.
Wow, very nice, very awesome. Any final thought, like a 30-second thought that you would like to leave our audience with?
Yeah, perception is reality, and is most importantly the perception of yourself. So if you believe strongly in yourself, other people will believe in you too. So most importantly, it's own it in yourself first to get what you want.
Wow, I love that. Thank you so much. It was very, very awesome to have you on the show. I really enjoyed the time with you. We're already done. So thank you very much. Give it up one more time. Jared Ganem.
Thank you for sticking with us until the end. To make this content even more valuable for you, please leave a comment below and share your thoughts, and also share this video with somebody you care about who absolutely needs to see this. Thank you very much. Have an outstanding day and see you next time.